In the past decade, the video game industry has been defined by an increasing emphasis on longer and bigger games. Open-world RPGs, sprawling action adventures, and 100-hour campaign-driven experiences have become the norm. Many AAA developers tout game length as a selling point, advertising hundreds of hours of content to justify rising game prices. But do games really need to be long to be good? Or is there value in shorter, more focused experiences? Today we're going to look at the evolution of game length, how industry trends have shifted towards massive open worlds, why shorter games still have their place, and the importance of pacing and player engagement. We'll look at examples from indie darlings to AAA blockbusters, examining what truly makes a game memorable, engaging, and worth playing, regardless of how many hours it lasts. Video game length has evolved dramatically over the past few decades. In the arcade era, games were designed to be short and difficult, encouraging repeated playthroughs as players tried to get further each time. Classic titles like Pac-Man and Donkey Kong were built around this model, providing brief but endlessly replayable experiences that focused on skill improvement and high score chasing. Since these games were coin-operated, their short length wasn't a limitation, but an intentional design choice to keep players engaged while continuously spending money. Arcade games focused on instant action and fast resets, making the experience about mastery and skill progression rather than completion. As home consoles became mainstream, developers experimented with longer-form storytelling. Games like The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past and Final Fantasy VI expanded beyond the arcade format, offering larger worlds, deeper narratives, and a greater sense of progression. However, these games still remained relatively short by today's standards, often 10 to 20 hour long, with Final Fantasy games maybe lasting a little longer. Balancing concise storytelling with engaging gameplay was important. This era introduced side-scrolling platformers, top-down RPGs, and early open-ended exploration, all of which influenced how games were structured in later years. The following home console generations pushed the industry towards larger, more complex gaming experiences. Titles like Final Fantasy VII, Persona 3, and The Elder Scrolls III Morrowind introduced long, intricate stories and expansive worlds that demanded 40+ hours to complete. On the opposite of these long, story-based games, shorter yet critically acclaimed experiences like Silent Hill 2 and Metal Gear Solid proved that games could still have depth and impact without excessive length. These shorter titles often focused on atmosphere, tension, and player immersion, prioritizing quality over quantity. The rise of cinematic storytelling in games like Resident Evil and God of War showcased how developers could craft memorable narratives within relatively compact experiences. By the 2010s, the rise of open-world design completely reshaped expectations. Titles like Skyrim, The Witcher 3, and Red Dead Redemption emphasized player freedom, massive open worlds, and hundreds of hours of content. Developers increasingly used game length as a marketing tool, promoting the size of the world, the hours of content, and the sheer amount of activities a player could engage in. This shift changed how replayability and player agency were viewed, making sheer volume of content a selling point rather than core game design mechanics. Many modern AAA studios focus on game length as a primary selling point. In an era where a game can cost $70 at launch, developers often feel pressured to justify the price tag by offering as much content as possible. This leads to massive open-world games that are technically impressive, but sometimes filled with unnecessary padding. Games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla and Horizon Forbidden West offer massive open worlds, but some players argue that the excessive length actually harms the experience. These games feature long checklists of side content, repetitive missions, and an overwhelming amount of collectibles that sometimes make it feel like filler rather than meaningful gameplay. While open worlds offer a sense of exploration and immersion, they can also become exhausting when content is stretched thin just to increase playtime. Additionally, pressure to meet player expectations for length has led to live service elements and grind-heavy mechanics. Games like Destiny 2 have introduced time-gated content, daily challenges, and artificial progression systems to extend their lifespan. While this can increase engagement, it also leads to burnout and fatigue, as players feel obligated to continuously grind in order to keep up. On the other hand, some lengthy games justify their runtime with strong narratives and player-driven exploration. The Witcher 3 and Elden Ring offer massive playtimes, The worlds feel alive, their stories are engaging, and every quest offers something meaningful. The key difference is whether the game respects the player's time. A well-designed open world should feel organic and rewarding, not like a series of objectives designed to artificially inflate game length. Many players today suffer from open world fatigue, where the sheer scale of a game feels like a burden rather than an adventure. The excitement of discovery is lost when every side quest feels like a chore. Some would rather have a well-paced 10-hour experience than a bloated 100-hour slog. Not every game needs to be huge to be great. In fact, some of the most impactful and critically acclaimed games in history are short, focused, and designed to be played in a few sittings. Indie games like Celeste, Inside, and Journey prove that a game doesn't need to be 50 hours long to tell an emotional, compelling story. These titles emphasize tight gameplay mechanics, strong narratives, and minimalistic but meaningful design. They respect the player's time by offering a concise, well-crafted experience that leaves a lasting impression rather than overwhelming them with an endless amount of content. These games often also experiment with gameplay in ways that larger AAA titles cannot, as they are not bound by the need for mass market appeal. Because of this, indie developers can craft short, but deeply personal and unique experiences that stand apart from traditional blockbuster titles. Even in the AAA space, games like Resident Evil 2 Remake and Uncharted: The Lost Legacy offer shorter campaigns, but are widely praised for their pacing, polish, and replayability. These games strip away unnecessary content and focus on delivering a high-quality experience from start to finish. Instead of artificially extending gameplay with repetitive objectives, they keep players engaged with intense pacing, carefully structured encounters, and a strong emphasis on gameplay variety. These shorter experiences also allow players to replay and fully appreciate a game, rather than feeling fatigued after one exhausting, drawn-out playthrough. Another significant advantage of shorter games is their accessibility to players with limited time. Not everyone has the ability to dedicate dozens of hours to a sprawling RPG, but a well-placed 6 to 10 hour game can fit seamlessly into a busy schedule. Games like Portal, for example, provide deep, fulfilling experiences in a fraction of the time, making them perfect for players who prefer a focused adventure without the overwhelming time commitment. This accessibility ensures that gaming remains inclusive, catering to both hardcore and casual players alike. One of the most overlooked aspects of game design is pacing. A well-paced game, regardless of length, ensures that the player remains engaged from beginning to end. Some games stretch their runtime unnecessarily, leading to repetitive quests, excessive grinding, or drawn-out storytelling. A shorter game, when designed properly, removes the obstacles and delivers a tight, refined experience that respects the player's time. The best games, whether long or short, maintain consistent player engagement. They introduce new mechanics at the right moments, keep narrative momentum strong, and avoid filler content. A great example of this is The Last of Us Left Behind, a brief but impactful story expansion that delivers emotional depth and engaging gameplay in just a few hours. Despite its short runtime, it remains one of the most celebrated narratives in modern gaming because it tells a complete and satisfying story without overstaying its welcome. Shorter games also tend to focus on replayability rather than sheer length. Titles like Hades and Dead Cells embrace roguelike mechanics, ensuring that each playthrough offers something different, keeping players invested even if a single run only lasts a few hours. These games prove that lasting engagement doesn't always come from an expansive world, but from tightly designed mechanics that make players want to return again and again. Ultimately, it's not about how long a game is, it's about how well it uses the time it has. A game that respects the player's time, whether 5 hours or 50, will always be better than the one that stretches itself thin just to appear bigger. So do games need to be long to be good? Absolutely not. While long games can be fantastic when done right, length alone does not determine quality. A great game is one that keeps the player engaged, delivers a memorable experience, and doesn't waste their time. As the gaming industry moves forward, developers should focus less on how long a game is, and more on how meaningful the experience feels. Do you agree? Do you prefer long open-world games or short, replayable experiences? Let me know down in the comments. And while you're there, maybe like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you want more videos like this. Thank you for watching as always. I love you, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.